So we should be live now. Let me check. It says it's starting. All right. So we are live. What's going on, people? Back with another video. Quick work break. If you were in the Slack room or signed up for the Black Knight Coding Slack channel, then you would have got the notice about an hour ago that I was going to go live. And here we go. I'm 13 minutes late, but such is life. Such is life. I got tied up with some work stuff. But we're getting to it. So I figured I'd do well, A, take a work break, and two, come and holler at y'all. Kamar, what's going on? Yo, yo. I see you in the building. What's going on? If it's if you're watching this on the replay, I highly recommend uh, speeding this up times two. They flow a lot better when you speed it up times two. Uh, when you code, try to zoom in a little hard to see. Kamar, was that for the last one? The last live I did that. Ended up redoing it. I don't know if you caught the last one. You might have caught the one before the last, and I ended up redoing it just because a lot of people said that the code was small. So I redid it. If you check the uploads on the channel, you'll see that there was two different versions of that string manipulation live stream. I did one on I don't know if it was Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, or the day before Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve, something like that. Um, so you should be able to find those. And take a look at that last one and tell me if you still think that's small. Okay, you said no, you didn't. Okay, cool, perfect. Okay, cool. That's why I wanted to make sure. So I'm aware of that now. That was my first time trying to show code, and I hadn't even put thought to it being too small on the viewer screen because I was just looking at it on my screen like, that's what I look at all day. Looks good to me. Works on my machine. But nah, I went back and reshot it just so people could see it. That's one of my pet peeves too. I can't believe I didn't think about that. Is watching people give a talk or something like that, and they do coding and you can't read the text. So I'm glad that ended up working out. Um, I figured as part of the live today, I go over some podcasts that I listen to, um, both when I'm working and when I'm away from work as well. Um, I'm a big avid podcast listener. It's how I started to learn the lingo of programming. Before I was a uh, Kiana, what's going on? I see you in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. Um, but podcasts are how I started to pick up the lingo of programming before I had even gotten into the industry, um, gotten established in the industry at least. So I was listening to podcasts, and it was kind of like when I told the story of going to my first meetup, programming meetup. I think it was either the JavaScript or the PHP. I think it was the JavaScript meetup here, the local one. And I probably caught about 10% of what they were talking about. Podcast was kind of a similar story. My eyes would glaze over at some points, and because I didn't understand the concepts or things they were talking about, but I continued to listen, over and over and over, and to different podcasts, and that you kind of start to soak in those terms and those words and that knowledge. So I figured I'd share that with you, at least some of the things that I choose to listen to. So I pulled up my podcast listener that I listen to. I recently actually changed um, podcast hosts. Let me switch this camera. Boom. So that when I'm looking up, you guys can actually see. All right, cool. Um, I recently switched podcast hosts on my phone. I've been using Downcast as a podcast listening service for a long time, but it's that. Well, anyway, it looks just like this. This is Downcast that you're viewing right now. Just Downcast, Downcast. If you look at it, they have a native version for Mac and for iOS as well. And so this is the Mac version that you're seeing on the screen here. Um, but I switched over to a service called Breaker on the iPhone. The only downfall to Breaker is that they don't have any type of web client or native Mac client. It's only an iOS app for now. They're a smaller, newer company, um, but I like what they're doing because they're bringing the social network aspect to podcasts. So you'll be able to see, you're able to control what you share back and forth, but you're able to see what your friends are listening to. If they use the Breaker app, you can hook it up to your Twitter and your Facebook, and you're able to, automatically import all your friends there. And as they listen to stuff, you can see what they listen to. You can recommend things for your friends to listen to. Um, so I kind of like that. I like it for the discovery aspect of being able to listen to things. My Twitter is filled with a lot of developers, um, and I think it would be cool to know what other developers are listening to, especially because I work remote, and so I'm not in an office around other developers. Um, so I don't get that chat of what guys are listening to, um, or what developers are listening to. Period. Uh, so I use it. I use it for that, and I like the client. They've got everything that I look for in a podcast player, where you can skip forwards and backwards, past ads or intros, and you can adjust the speed. For me, I'm all about adjusting that speed. I crank it up to at least 1.5, if not 2x, depending on how fast how fast the talkers are. If they're fast talkers, I'll do 1.5. If they talk slow, like me, then I speed it up to 2x, and it seems like a normal conversation. My ear has just been trained to 2x after so long. So, Ace, what's going on, man? I see you. See you in the building. Uh, just to let you know I'm here, but driving, so I can hear you, but can't really speak. Okay, that's cool, man. I appreciate you joining in. Daniel Harris, what's going on? Good to see you again. Yeah, man. Good to see you too, Daniel. So that's cool. So let's go through some of these uh, some of these podcasts right quick, and then we'll check the chat, see what's going on, catch up with the people. So uh, I'll go through the main ones that I listen to first. So I'm gonna skip around, and then I'll go back through it and kind of show you all the ones that's in there. So the main ones I listen to concerning coding, I would definitely say this: coding blocks. I wish I could open it up so you can see it. But this coding blocks is, you can see the last, let me go to the episode. So there's 70 episodes in the feed. The last one was put up November 12th. And you can see it's about a month between that they put them out, once a month type deal, pretty much. But it's a good one. Talking about patterns, architecture, best practices, tips, tricks for software, database, and web developers slash engineers. They do a pretty good podcast, and you get a lot off of it. You can see some of these episodes are clean architecture, object oriented mistakes, software design, anti patterns, um, software architecture, domain driven design, aggregate root factories and repositories. So here's what they'll do. They'll take a book like the book Clean Code by Uncle Bob, and I think Uncle Bob's real name is Robert Martin. Um, but he wrote a book called Clean Code. That's one of those ubiquitous books that, like, they say every software developer should read. And they'll take that book and they'll break it down section by section or chapter by chapter, and they'll talk about each section or chapter as a podcast, episode. They don't just talk about the book; they talk about a lot of other things too. But the podcast will be based around, a particular section like this. Explicit constraints, processes, specific pattern, supple design, all this stuff that you can see here, uh, that they talk about the domain-driven design and writing classes the right way, unit testing, et cetera, et cetera. So I really enjoy their stuff because they talk about some good theoretical stuff that, especially if you're a self-taught developer, you may have missed by not, talking about the theory part of it in school. So I highly recommend that. Again, it's Coding Blocks is the name of the podcast there. So, oh, let me see. I can't really blow this up. So I hope you guys can see it on the screen or on the replay, um, because I can't make it any bigger. Can I? Nah, I can't make it any bigger. Sorry. Uh, Next one I listen to the Laravel podcast a lot. They got 60 episodes in there uh, as well. Laravel, if you're not aware, is a PHP framework. Um, a very popular PHP framework as well, that was created by a guy named Taylor Otwell, um, that came from a C# background. He came from a .NET C# background. So you'll find that Laravel feels um, a lot like C# or .NET. It takes a lot of the paradigms from that and applies them to PHP. A lot of good best practices and stuff is wrapped up into Laravel. Kind of the big boy Laravel frameworks before Laravel, or big boy PHP frameworks before Laravel was Symfony and Zend um, frameworks. Uh, and then Laravel came along, and it was kind of the new kid on the block. But a lot of people took to it because some of the older frameworks either had were lacking in the documentation area, or they were just harder to use. Like the ramp up curve was a lot steeper with like Symfony. When I worked at Allegiant, they used Symfony uh, PHP framework as a middleware layer, and a lot of the uh, junior PHP devs there, they found the ramp up curve to be pretty steep, but it was very powerful once you learned it. So it was hard to learn, but you could do a lot with it when you had it. Laravel came and like flattened out that learning curve, you know. But a lot of the old schoolers that like Symphony, they say, well, you can't. You got to do so much hacking around the magic that Laravel provides to make the learning curve easier. If you want to do big, overly complex applications, you kind of got to go against the framework a little bit to make that stuff happen, or you got to really be able to open the hood and see how it works under the hood in order to make the changes necessary for your specific application and use case. Don't know if that's the case nowadays. There's been a lot of changes in Laravel, and I haven't been keeping up with that community, but I do enjoy the podcast. There's a site called Laracast. Let me see if I've got a web browser. I do not. Let me grab a web browser and we'll bring that over so you guys can see it. Let's see this. All right. So if we go to Laracast, yeah. So Laracast is a great site. It's kind of like Netflix for your career. So it's from a guy named Jeffrey Way. He built this site. I think originally it was kind of so he could remember things that he needed to remember as far as programming stuff, and it turned into this whole thing where now he's got like tons of video, as you can see, like there's 710 videos on Laravel framework, 304 just on PHP itself, 79 testing videos, 238 videos on JavaScript, 268 videos on tooling, so stuff like grunt, gulp, et cetera, et cetera. All of that stuff is found here, and you can see tooling, professional PHP workflow with Sublime, Text 3, testing Vue.js. Here's object-oriented bootcamp, uh, Visual Studio Code for PHP developers, um, PHP 7, real-time Laravel with WebSockets, design patterns in PHP, solid principles in PHP. If you're not familiar with solid principles, that's a good thing to learn. It's that, again, that the theory stuff around, um, programming design. So you'll see these first letters spell solid, SOLID, and that's what the acronym stands for: single responsibility, open close principle, the Liskov substitution principle, interface segregation, and dependency injection. Uh, so if you want to learn a lot of that stuff, what I like about his site is it's cheap compared to most other sites. I believe it's still $9 a month. He used to say, "Buy me a cup of coffee and I'll teach you about programming." So he said, if you can just give him $9 a month and the site's running. Let me see. If I go to sign up, it should tell me how much it is. Yeah, so it's still $9 a month. So that's like real cheap. It's it's centered around PHP, but it is he's expanded it out to where it's more than it's centered around Laravel, but he's expanded it out to include PHP, just the core language, and also a lot of JavaScript stuff in here as well, as you can see. Uh, Front end, if you're interested in JavaScript and front end stuff, he's got courses that are just about JavaScript and front end stuff. So I haven't been, this is totally different from what uh, it was like the last time I came here. I haven't been on the site in a while, but I really like his teaching style. He has a really good teaching style, um, where he breaks stuff down without using, the big crazy words. Here it is, JavaScript. Boom. And you can see there's tons of videos that have to go around JavaScript, and that's just page one, and there's at least 4 pages. Yeah, 4 whole pages of stuff just on JavaScript. He's a fan of the Vue.js framework, so you'll find a lot of stuff here. There's Laravel and Vue. Here's routing with Vue.js, which is a JavaScript framework that's growing really, really quickly. So, anyway, I digress. Let's go back to a nice little deal. So that's the Laravel podcast. I listen to that a lot. Learn the code with me is another great. Let's go back. Boom, boom. Hey Carla, how you doing? Miss Thomas and Nafinium. What about making portfolio websites? Uh, what about it, Nafinium? Are you looking for places that will teach you about that, or are you looking, uh, or do you want me to talk about making a portfolio website for yourself? Just answer that, and then I can tackle that question as needed. Learn to code with me podcast. Um, it's cool. I want to be able to blow this up so you can see the actual like logo and design. So there we go. Learn to code with me. Uh, Podcast is put on by a young lady named Laurence. Laurence. Ooh, Laurence. What's your last name? Is it Bradford or something like that? I forget. I forget. My apologies, Laurence, for forgetting your last name. But anyway, she interviewed me on here. So you may have, if you listen to this podcast already, you'll see that there's an episode in here somewhere that features me. If you want to hear me talk about my story in audio form, you can definitely do it. This goes back to episode 16. There's 33 episodes in the feed. Here we go. Real estate agent to software engineer with Brian Knight. So from November 1st, 2016 is when they aired that. So You can go back in here. That was before I started doing any of the YouTube videos or anything like that. You can go back and listen to that and kind of see where my head was, you know, over a year ago. That was before I was really down thick in the remote work stuff or had the plans for, investing my money and all of that stuff, and everything was still, um, newer and fresher than it is today. So you can go back and check that out. And that's Learn to Code with Me podcast. She interviews people. The majority of these of her things are her finding people in the industry and interviewing them. So I can definitely recommend her podcast. Let's see. Node Up. I really like this one. Uh, it talks about Node.js, of course, JavaScript framework. Node Up is is what it's called. There are 108 episodes in the feed. Really cool if you want to know about Node. They'll have um, the people that write Node or are responsible on the core team come on and give information about the development of Node. You can see these are going all the way back into 2015. How many? 2011. Wow, 2011. So if you want to start with the first show in 2011, you can really hear the progression that Node.js has taken in the last 7 years. That's crazy, man. These episodes you can see out over an hour long for all of them. Let's see when the last one was dropped. Oh wow, have they been missing? So this is January 2017. January 2017. Oh no, they still making them. Okay. So all the way through December 11th this year. So they're still dropping these out, episode 124. Um, so that's good. I would definitely recommend Node Up if you're front end and you want to start learning about Node to do some back end stuff. I can recommend that as well. How to make for myself. Okay, Nifinium, I'll talk about that as soon as I'm done with the podcast stuff. Programming Throwdown was another one I like. I think they stopped making this though, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, they're still putting it out. That's cool. Cool, cool. Okay. Throwdown is another one. There's two guys that do that one. I know one's name is Patrick, and I forget the other guy's name. But does it tell the names here? It doesn't tell the names there. Okay. But that's the logo for it. If you're looking for it, Programming Throwdown. They talk about some great concepts as well. Uh, here we go. Here you go. Cryptocurrency, soft skills as a programmer. Oh, COBOL and mainframe computing. That's an interesting one I'd like to hear about. When I went to college back in 99, 2000, that tells my age a little bit. Um, I took a class with COBOL and RPG, which was programming languages for old IBM AS400. I shouldn't say old because they're still running AS400s, mainframe computers from IBM. And these guys, actually, if you write COBOL and you're willing to write COBOL, you can get paid a lot of money because there's not a lot of people that's still writing COBOL, and COBOL is still being used out in the wild. So the small, supply and demand thing. So there's a small supply of developers and engineers that are willing to write COBOL because I don't want to say it's a quote unquote dead language, but new applications are being developed in COBOL. But somebody needs to maintain the old stuff that's still out there. So you have a small supply of engineers, which means the demand for them goes up and their value goes up, meaning they get paid more money. So those guys and gals that are willing to write COBOL get compensated very well for being willing to write in that language. So that's something I'd be interested to listen to. I'm glad I'm doing this because I'm going back over some of the podcasts I haven't listened to yet, and this is good. So the Close Your Language, PHP and Hack. This is some good stuff. I got to get back up. Spring Framework, which is Java stuff. Talking about code reviews, that's good stuff. But Programming Throwdown is another good one. I really like the Shop Talk show. It's put on by Chris Coyier and Dave Rupert. Chris Corrier is the guy that runs CSS tricks. So if you're learning CSS and you've Googled some type of CSS technique, 9 times out of 10, one of the search results on the first page of Google is going to be some type of article from css-tricks.com. He started that blog that was all about CSS, and and it blew up to be this big thing where now it's like the centerpiece of the CSS community. And he's the guy that started that. He then went on to co-found with two other founders a site called CodePen. So if you've used CodePen to write your code in, Chris Collier is one of the three co-founders that started CodePen. Funny thing here, I think we're going to talk about it in just a second, but CodePen also has its own podcast. So you can hear Chris, and Dave Rupert is a guy that he runs a three-man consultancy. So they do freelance work. The name of his company is called Paravel, and they've done websites for places like, Microsoft and Coca-Cola and all these big name companies that, pay them very well to design sites for their advertising campaigns and stuff like that. So the two of them, Dave Rupert and Chris Corey, get together and they have a podcast called Shop Talk Show, and they've been doing it for a minute. There's a lot of episodes out. You can see here, this is up to 292, and they've gone in order. So there's 292 different episodes of it. They drop it on a regular basis. You can see here's one on the 11th, on the 5th of December, the 27th, the 20th, 13th. So it goes as frequently as like every week. So there's great stuff on here. It's kind of front end focused. So people will write into the show or call into the show and leave questions, voicemails, and then Chris and Dave will talk about those on the show. So it's it's a good show. I love to listen to them. They have a great chemistry together, and you can learn a lot, in the front endy world um, from listening to that show. Uh, if you're a beginner and want to learn uh, like some core strategy and frameworks, core strategy and theory, Take Up Code podcast. It's kind of a newer one. I think it started maybe a little over a year ago. They've got how many? Oh, wow, they've been busting them out. 215 episodes. But you'll notice that all of these are like short episodes. Yeah, hey, I appreciate it, Carla. Yeah, I know, man. I got a lot of subscribers in the last couple of weeks, or the last week, just from being mentioned on Joe's show. So I appreciate it. Anybody that's new to the channel, um, welcome. Sorry, I'm reading the chat over here at the same time. Anybody that's new to the channel, welcome from Joe's channel or Coding Phases channel. Uh, yeah, I appreciate somebody mentioning me. That's good stuff. Good stuff, man. I just like to give back, to the community. I try to think about what I would have found valuable when I was first starting out and I was doing it all on my own. You know, I didn't have any type of mentor or community or anything like that. It was literally just me and my laptop and the internet and me trying to figure it out. So, I just want to be able to give back to somebody else and, help people get into the game. So, especially, people that either don't want to go to college, can't afford college, uh, stuff like that, just to be an example that, hey, you don't have to go down that road. If you have the drive and determination, you can teach yourself, you know, how to code. It's going to be hard. It's been the hardest thing that one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. Well, the hardest thing I've ever had to do to enter an industry has definitely been learning to program. Uh, I've done harder things in the military and stuff like that, but or from physical standpoints and stuff. But as far as having to learn something in order to get into an industry, this has been the hardest by far. So that's that, man. Kelvin, I see you. I see you. I'm gonna get to your question. Carla, actually, I was following you first. Remember, you were talking. about working at the casino. Oh wow, that's crazy, Carl. Yeah. So, okay, that's crazy. All right, all right. Let me finish these podcasts, then we're gonna talk. Kevin, don't go anywhere. Kelvin, I'm gonna get to all your questions, man. I like your questions you're asking, so we're gonna talk about that. But Take Up Code podcast that talks about a lot of the episodes are short and sweet. So if you don't have the attention span to listen to an hour long podcast, uh, Take Up Code podcast is a good podcast to pick up because you can see a lot of these are 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 16 minutes. I don't think they have anything that's like over 20 minutes long. So you can listen to that right quick. If you got a quick little short break somewhere, you can take something in. It's kind of really you can tell the guy that does it comes from like a C background, C plus plus background, because they he goes into breaking down all of that like C level stuff. So it's really good if you want to learn foundational lower level programming, where um, he talks about function pointers and memory management stuff, like all kinds of stuff. You can see this data types, all kinds of stuff that he's going to talk about. Here's streams, data types, date times, data types, smart pointers, lambdas. If you've heard all this terminology and don't know, chances are Take Up Code podcast has some type of short, quick podcast that'll get you up to speed on that stuff. Three Devs and a Maybe is another one that I like. They're up to episode 139. They have longer podcasts, about 45 minutes to an hour or so. It's these three guys. I think all three of them are from, they're from overseas, like in Europe. He has a very British accent. Um, a couple of the guys there. They're kind of more back-endy, and I think one of them is a core contributor to PHP, the core language. If not, he contributes a lot to the PHP community. But they talk about some great stuff. They'll get on and just chat amongst the three of them. I think the three of them have worked together in the past, and I think two of them still do work at the same place. So they have a friendship there where they'll just chat about, random stuff, and then, get on to the topic about some type of programming thing. You can see managing concurrency in Postgres uh, with the guests. Here's caching using Varnish with the guests. Agile approach to Bitcoin. Let's AWS everything, which is Amazon Web Services. So there's all kind of good stuff there. But you can see most of this is like from a back-endy perspective. So if you want to know about like databases and data and APIs and stuff like that, it's a great podcast for that stuff. And is that it? Where's the Code Pen podcast? I might have skipped over it. Okay, I don't see it. And there's a couple ones. Angular Air is another one I listen to. Of course, I'm an Angular developer. That's how I get paid, or that's where I make the bulk of my money is from using the Angular framework. So, of course, I subscribe to Angular specific podcasts, such as Angular Air. And there was another one called Adventures in Angular. This doesn't have all the ones I have on my phone, I just noticed. Because Adventures in Angular is not showing up here as well. That's probably my favorite Angular specific podcast is Adventures in Angular with Joe Eames, and they have different. They have a panel of people that are kind of regulars that will rotate in and out, and then they'll have guests as well. Um, who's the main guy? Uh, Chuck. I can't. Charles Maxwood. That's his name. Charles Maxwood runs a. He started one podcast and then started another one and another one to where he had so many. He started a podcast network. Um, Oh man, Dev Chat. That's what it is. DevChat.tv, I believe, is the name of it. Yeah, there we go. DevChat.tv. So these are all the different podcasts that he started. JavaScript Jabber, Adventures in Angular, the Ruby Rogues, Freelancers Show, iFreaks, which is iPhone development, React Native Radio, which is for React Native mobile app development, remote conference talks, web security warriors, and Rails clips, which is crazy because he started all these different ones. and he ended up spinning some of them off. Like he is no longer the host of Adventures in Angular, but he built up the panel of people that do the talks on that show, and then he just let them kind of run with it, and he still manages, you know, getting the shows up and out and hosting and all of that stuff. But he's not actively a part of that. I don't know if he's still on JavaScript Jabber either. Um, but it's these are good stuff. JavaScript Jabber, I definitely recommend listening to. You can see they're up to episode 293, so a lot of content there. And then Adventures in Angular NGRX Entities 169. I was actually listening to this podcast last night when I was doing some running around with the fam. So I dropped my lady off at a store. She's running in to buy something, do a return. Me and the kids in the car, listen to our own stuff. I got my headphones in, listening to a podcast. Ruby Rogues, so Charles's background was he was a freelance Ruby developer, and he used Rails. So that's why you have Freelancer Show, where he talks about his experience in freelancing. If you want to get into freelancing and work for yourself and go get your own clients and your own business, he talks about how to do that successfully. And it's not just about, you can see there's 277 episodes um, in the Freelancers Show. So let me get rid of that. I thought it would give a listing. Here's episode guide. So there you go. You can see all of these. So he talks about it, self publishing, getting your on your first podcast. So he approaches it from the whole level, which is why I highly recommend it if you want to be a freelancer, that you check out this podcast, because most people just think, oh, I want to work for myself and I want to make websites for people. Well, he learned the hard way that, like, you have to be a business owner and business minded, and a lot of the work is in acquiring clients. So he talk, talks about keeping your pipeline filled, so that, yeah, you get a client, and then most developers will get a client and then they stop prospecting for new clients because they're doing the work for the current client. And when you're doing the work for the current client, it's good, and you're getting those client checks coming in, and then you end up finishing the project, and boom, you're now you're broke again. So he was going through these cycles of, like, acquiring a client, getting paid really well by that client, but then the project would end, and he would have 2, 3 month gaps between getting the next client, because now you have to start up the client acquisition machine again and go find the next client. So even though um, he was making a high salary when he had a project, it ended up averaging down because you would have 2 to 3 months of no income. So he learned how to keep his pipeline filled with clients, how to keep your name out there, and how to be relevant. Somebody was asking in the chat about having, what's more important, having a GitHub or portfolio stuff. He talks about all of that stuff, and how to actually start blogging, and how to start making YouTube videos, and how to start, uh, get on a podcast or get featured on a podcast. And what it does is it gives yourself a name, so that, and it gives you some relevancy in the community. If you want to be a freelancer, you need to have some type of somebody, um, kind of putting their stamp on you, so that you have some type of level of authority and clout within the community for somebody to even find you, and hire. And he's worked it so well now that clients come to him, they find him instead of him having to chase the clients. So, um, don't want to go down a tangent there, but that came to mind, so I wanted to put that out there. Freelancers Show. When he was doing, Ruby for backend stuff, clients would want the whole thing. So not just Rails backend, but they needed front end stuff too. And so he learned how to use the Angular framework to start producing, whole application, full stack applications. He do the back end in Ruby and Rails, the front end in Angular and JavaScript. So he started all these podcasts because they were things that he was learning and doing. He learned how to make phone apps because he had a client that wanted an iOS application, so he had to learn iOS so he could get that. He could get that bag. You know what I'm saying? If you want that bag, you gotta be willing to learn and teach yourself stuff. So React Native Radio, that's uh, he learned how to program for iOS, but then if you learn React Native, you can also create Android applications as well. So all of this stuff is stuff that he has like firsthand experience in. He started these podcasts. Now I think he really does podcasts more than develop anymore because this thing is kind of taken off. Um, so yeah, I mean that's a good one. But that's where Adventures in Angular and all that stuff comes from. And then you'll see I have other um, podcasts on here as well from like other interests. A lot of PHP stuff. So Voices of the Elephant is an old PHP podcast. Um, what else did I have from PHP Town Hall? This was back, I started off doing PHP, so I had these PHP. Um, Here's Lately in PHP podcasts, but I don't do PHP anymore. So to be honest, I don't really listen to these PHP podcasts, but they're still in my feed just because I, I haven't taken them out. Here's a .NET one. If you are a Microsoft guy or gal and wanted to get into C# programming and using .NET, here's one with .NET. The startup that I worked at, small startup that lasted 6 months before they ran out of money and laid everybody off. The back end was in .NET, so that's when I signed up for like .NET because I wanted to be knowledgeable on the environment that I'm working in. So that's that. And then there's stuff outside of programming as well. 2 plus 2 Poker Cash. I'm a big poker head. I told you I spent a year while I was in college, and all I did to make money was play poker professionally. So I love poker. That's Tournament Poker Edge, uh, both live and the podcast. Here's Thinking Poker. So there's a bunch of poker stuff in there. You can see the Tim Ferriss show, Star Talk, because I love the universe and astrophysics and stuff like that as well. Here's some other ones that I don't listen to that often, Software Engineering Radio, because I think, oh, they're still putting out stuff. I had some on here that had stopped putting out content. Okay, they're still putting out stuff. Software Engineering Daily is putting out stuff. I think most of the ones that don't put out content anymore are down here at the bottom. Um, like Web Dev Radio, I used to listen to. They have no episodes. Uh, Poker did the niche podcast. I used to like this one. It was this guy and Gail who both worked remotely, and they had a little consultancy going. And I think the girl, the female, she was blind. She was like legally blind, and so she was a big accessibility person. So they would do sites together, right? Build websites for companies. And because she was legally blind, she knew how to make them how to think about accessibility first, so that you could use a screen reader like JAWS or JAWS JWS is a screen reader um, uh, that you can tab through a site and it will read the different parts of the site for somebody who's blind, so that a blind person can still use the internet. Um, so that was a great show, but they stopped making it, and looks like the feed's not even up anymore. That's one that I really hate. Stop producing content because I really did like that. Minimum with no, a lot of these just don't have any more stuff coming out. No episodes. Coding 101. So Code Wins. Here's Code Pen Radio. Here, they're still putting out episodes. I might just have a bad. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 155 episodes. All the way back to 2014. So that's the other one where Chris Collier we was talking about. All right, and 5 minutes of JavaScript. I used to like that one. It was nice and quick. Too scripted for me, but I liked it. I liked it back then. So that's the big thing. Oh, apartment investing, because that's the new deal. And Bigger Pockets. These are both real estate, of course. Apartment investing podcast with Michael Blank, and Bigger Pockets podcast for investing in residential real estate, because that's the next deal. Business credit and financing show to be educated on business credit, how to get credit for your LLC and such. And I kind of think that's it. Commercial real estate investing for dummies. That's commercial real estate elite, broker to brokers. I think that's it. And then my pop stuff. There's Drink Champs, Dunked On, which is basketball, Gary V show. Joomla is a PHP, not CRM, uh, CMS, kind of like WordPress, but Joomla is its own thing. So you can be a Joomla expert and build websites for people who have a freelancing deal there with that. All right, so let's go back through some of the comments, and let's talk about that, the comment stuff. Okay. Oh, okay. So Nifinium, good advice about how to make a portfolio website for yourself. So I have to disclose that uh, what I'm saying here will kind of be a little hypocritish because I haven't made a good portfolio site for myself. I haven't been in a situation where I have necessarily needed to make one for me, but that is a very specialized personal experience. Um, I fell into I kind of had really good timing when it came to the Angular JS framework because I kind of got into it at just the right time, and especially with Angular 2, or which is now Angular 5 uh, framework. I got into that early when it was still in alpha, and we were some of the first people that were building large scale applications with that. So I kind of got an Angular expert ish vibe going because I've been doing that Angular stuff, especially in a new version of Angular for kind of since the beginning. Doing Angular 2 before Angular 2 was cool type thing. So that's gotten me, kind of the last few jobs that I've gotten has all been because I was very knowledgeable with the Angular JS framework, and I haven't had to keep up a portfolio site. But when you're just beginning, um, I can highly recommend that. Um, Having a portfolio site is something that's good, which is why I recommend building projects. Remember in one of my lives or videos, I said if I had advice to give my old self was to build more stuff instead of just spending all the time learning, watching videos and taking tutorials and quizzes and stuff and coding challenges is to actually build more stuff because the knowledge you gain from building real world applications is invaluable. And it also allows you to have projects to put onto your portfolio site. Now, the portfolio site itself, you can take it however you want to take it. Some people will hand code it, from scratch because they want the portfolio site itself to be a testament of their coding skills. Other people will use a service, a CMS like Squarespace or WordPress or Wix, even one of those drag and drop um, kind of WYSIWYG type of systems to build their portfolio site because they just want a place to drop in, the screenshots and stuff of their work, and they don't care that the page itself be hand coded from themselves. I don't really have an opinion, one way or another. Just having a portfolio site of work that you can point to on an interview and go through and speak of intelligently is the biggest thing. On top of that, I think one of the other questions is going to get into that. So let's see. Uh, Thanks again, Carla, for the congratulations on being mentioned for 2018 developers to follow on YouTube. Again, big shout out to Coding Phase for that. What is more valuable? This is from Kelvin Davis. What is more valuable when applying to jobs, a portfolio or GitHub? I ask because I'm in the process of applying and I'm putting things up on GitHub while I work on my webpage. Self-taught brother here as well. Appreciate your channel coming from Phoenix. Okay, what's up, man? You ain't too far away from me. A little 5 hour car ride, 45-minute flight, I think, or hour and a half flight, something like that. I'm up in Vegas, so shout out and salute for being self-taught as well. So I would say, what is more important, portfolio or GitHub? Well, they can, I mean, you kind of said it in your second part where you said, I mean, the process, you're putting things up on GitHub while you work on your web page. So you're doing a little bit of both at the same time, you know. If you're building out a portfolio, um, it's good to use a version control system like GitHub, um, or Git is the version control system. GitHub is where you can host your Git repositories. It's not the only player in town. There's Bitbucket and a bunch of other places, but GitHub is kind of the leader in that space, I can say. So as you're building your projects for your portfolio, just push those up to GitHub as well, and then you've kind of killed two birds with one stone. You know what I'm saying? GitHub gives employers a little bit of confidence because they can actually go and see, instead of, if you just do a portfolio, um, and I'm looking at the site, if it's a web application, or I'm looking at the app, if it's a phone app, all you can see is the site, you know, see that it functions the way that you say it's supposed to function and such. What GitHub does is it allows me to open up the hood on that application and actually see the code that you wrote to get it to function. So it's one thing to make an application. I can make an app and it can look great, on the front. Um, but then you go back, especially if it's like a website, it can look beautiful. But then you go and you take a look at that HTML and that CSS that made that site, and you can see that I'm using, old, non-best practicing. I'm inlining my CSS into the HTML, which is a no-no. I'm doing all these, quote unquote, bad things um, in my portfolio site, whereas, I had you fooled just by looking at the site because you can't see what makes that up. Now, of course, you can go in, if it's a website, you can right click and do inspect and all this stuff, but inspect doesn't let you see everything, you know. Inspect is not the same as going into a GitHub repo and seeing the actual code. You know what I'm saying? So there's value in both of those, um, as you can see, but I'd say to do a little bit of both of those. If I was you, I'd have some stuff up on GitHub, and I'd also have, a nice little portfolio as well. And those are things that may not that may not get you the first bite at an interview, but there are things that you can point to in an interview that can definitely help you out. Um, because being able to talk about a problem with, somebody might ask you, tell me about a project you worked on, um, where you ran into a big roadblock. Tell me about that roadblock, and then I want you to tell me how you overcame that. And if you don't have any work to point to, you can't even answer that question. You know what I'm saying? You haven't worked on a project that was big enough to have any roadblocks, or people want to see how you think about problems, because your whole job as a software engineer is solving problems. Somebody presents you with a problem, and then you come up with a solution to solve that problem. You know, so if people want to see how your brain works into coming up with solutions to problems, so that's what any programming interview is going to be about, how you solve problems. Now, they all approach it from different ways. They might give you a coding challenge and let you do the coding challenge and see how you do. They might call you in and have you whiteboard and write code out on whiteboard. Um, they might throw data structures and algorithms. If you're going to interview at Google, you're going to have to whiteboard out some data structures and algorithms, and they're going to throw monkey wrenches at you and say, well, what if this happens and that happens? You got to change your algorithm and stuff on the fly and all this stuff. But it's all boils down to seeing how your brain works with coming up with solutions to problems. So um, that's kind of the key there. Cool. But salute, and definitely stay on the path. Don't get discouraged, because there's definitely going to be rough days. All right, cool. What kind of developer? This is from Berkey. Ber Berkey Tamer. Shout out to you, Berkey. By the way, what kind of developer were you? By the way, web developer. Yes. So pretty much, I'd say 90% of the work that I've done has been in the web space. You know, I've done some stuff as well with hybrid applications on mobile as well. You know, building iOS and Android stuff using a hybrid application like Ionic framework, but it's still using technology. So Ionic is just a wrapper around Cordova phone gap that allows you to build mobile applications using web technologies. So you're able to use JavaScript and frameworks like Angular, which is a JavaScript framework, to build applications that will compile down to um, code that'll run on iOS devices and Android devices. So without having to go learn Swift or Objective C for Android, or having to go learn Java or Kotlin for um, for Android. For iOS is Objective C and Swift, and then Java and Kotlin is for Android stuff. So it allows a web developer to still be able to make a phone app pretty much. But the majority of my stuff has been web based, definitely. Uh, Kelvin says, I'm here, man, all good. Carla says, speaking of freelancing, how do you feel about Upwork? I'm not very um, knowledgeable on Upwork. I know it's kind of like Elance, if I'm not mistaken, right? Where it's a network where you can offer up your services and have people choose you or not choose you to do work on their projects, right? I think they're just a platform that makes a connection between people that need work done and people that can do the work. And then Upwork plays middleman, and I'm sure they get a cut of the pie or something like that to do it. Um, I don't have any. I wouldn't have any problems with Upwork. I would not rely on any platform, be it Upwork or Elance or freelancers.com or any platform. I would not build my business around relying on clients from a platform, if that makes sense. I might use that to break into an industry and to get projects under my belt that could go onto a portfolio or into my portfolio. Um, but that would not be something that I would base my business around, because you never know what's going to happen to a particular platform. They may change their fee structure to where it's higher than what you would like, and maybe you're not even really making any money uh, when you break it down. If they're taking too much money from you, or they could flat out just go out of business and take all of your leads and business, you know, away from you type deal. Some of the platforms only want you to do communication through the platform, so they maintain control of the relationship. Um, and I definitely don't like that, because if it's your business, you should be in control of the relationship between you and the client. You know, some places will obscure or abstract the contact information between the two parties, so that to try to force you to go to use the platform for messaging or whatever. But I would try to bypass or get around that as quickly as possible. You know, maybe the first contact or so through the platform, just so that the client that's paying you feels comfortable and that you're not trying to circumvent the system. But once you build trust with the client, I would definitely try to move that relationship from the platform to off of the platform, so that you can maintain that relationship long term, uh, independent of Upwork or any other platform like that. You always speak about business chops. I'm not sure how to really bid for freelance work. That's fine. That's where places like Upwork and stuff come from. That's really why I would recommend that freelancers podcast as well, because you're going to start hearing from people that freelance for a living, and they talk about things just like that, like how to bid on work. How would I even know? First, how do I find the client? Find prospects that can turn into clients, and when I find those clients, how much do I charge them? because I've never had to charge for anything. So how do I know how to even set my rate or my price? Do I charge by the project or do I charge hourly? What are the pros and cons of doing it both ways? Like I learned all of that stuff from listening to that freelancers podcast. So I would definitely recommend if you have those types of questions, caller, go check out that freelancers podcast. Again, it's devchat.tv. I think I still got it up here. Yeah. So devchat.tv. You can see it up here in the deal. Let's see if I can blow that up. Of course, it won't let me blow it up. But and then it's the freelancers show. So again, 277 different episodes that I answer those questions for you. But those are key questions to to know before you get into a situation where you might be underbidding yourself. But most people don't ask for enough. I'll tell you that because they're scared of the client saying no. Um, but you can vastly undersell yourself and your services, especially if you start that trend of you know bidding too low for your services, and then those people tell the next people, "Oh, I got so and so to do my, I got Carla to do my site for me, and she only charged me X." Now these people come to you expecting you to charge X, and it's harder for you to say, "No, I don't charge X, I charge Y," and they're like, "Oh, so and so said you only charge X," so then you end up in that space there. You know, a lot of times when I would do work for people, I tell them, the rate that we have is the rate just between me and you. Please don't divulge that information because I may or may not charge the next person, the same price. So for one, it would make them feel like they're kind of getting a special deal from me. Um, and so, yeah, maybe they don't want to tell the next person that they got a deal uh, because they want to keep that to themselves. So that's my thoughts there. Uh, Sophia. Okay, thank you so much. These podcast suggestions is another huge plus. Good, good. Thanks again for your advice. I'm self-taught as well from Atlanta. What's going on? ATL, the last chocolate city out there, man. For real. Um, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, you find the podcast stuff useful. Um, Somebody had to turn me, I forget who even turned me on the podcast, man. But I heard it somewhere from somebody. I didn't even know what a podcast was for the longest, and now I'm like the biggest podcast head. Period. Drives my lady crazy because we get in the car to go somewhere instead of turning on the music to bump, I'm turning on the podcast. Because I was just when I get when I get into something like I just go all in. When I played poker, like I was poker crazy. I listened to poker podcasts. I read poker books. I played as much poker as I could play. Like I just get tunnel vision and I'm all in. And I did the same thing when I got into developing. Every free second I had, I wanted to be watching a tutorial or or writing actual code or listening to a podcast or watching a video on YouTube about code. Like I just get crazy focus. That's a pro and a con because I stopped caring about anything else. And my lady got to come and slap me around a couple of times, like, hey, don't forget about us. you know. So she keeps me on the straight and level as far as staying focused on the other things I need to focus on. But if you leave it up to me, I'll sit in this room all day long and just focus on code stuff. You know what I'm saying? So that's both the gift and a curse for me. So Uh, that's kind of how I feel about portfolios, which is why I thought during this journey to put most of my stuff on GitHub so they'll see what I'm doing. Yeah, good thing there, Kelvin. I definitely recommend that. Carla says, thank you for the question to Kelvin. Uh, she's doing the same. I'm also at that stage as well, Kelvin, so I'm doing the same. That's good stuff. Good stuff. These gems right here, man. Thank you. Yeah, of course, Kelvin, man. That's what I'm here for. If you got questions, please ask questions. And I'll give you my opinions. Remember that they're my opinions. I can only go by the experiences that I've had. I'm not the end all, be all, know all. But I have been in those situations before. I've both been on I've been on both sides of the hiring table. When I worked at the last company I was at, the developers, or when I worked at the place out in Denver and Allegiant Airlines as well, the first place I worked for, they made the developers a part of the hiring process. So in order for you to get hired, the developers were the ones that were hiring you, which makes a lot of sense because they're the ones that's going to be working with you. You know what I'm saying? I've also worked at places where they would just kind of have maybe the lead developer do the interview and then some management people, but I really like being a part of the interview process, and I like being in those rooms. And I was the one asking the questions as well. And then we leave there and we would get together as the team of developers and we would give our feedback on candidates, like, I don't really like this, or did you see when I asked him this, kind of how he handled that, or he came off too cocky, I know it all, I don't need y'all type thing, or just all kinds of. So I've seen both sides of the table. You know what I'm saying? I've been the griller and the grillee. So as you can say, um, Carla, thanks for the information. You're more than welcome. That's me. Once I get dialed into something, I'm 100% dialed in. That is me. Yeah, yeah, that's it. No balance though. Yeah, that's me. I struggle with balance. I struggle with balance a lot. You know, I tell you what, this Christmas break, um, when I was doing those lives, I'll say from to last Friday to through yesterday, that was the longest break I've had without writing any code um, this entire year, especially since I took on the second gig in August. Man, there's not a day that goes by that I don't write a line of code. And it was so good just to let my brain relax from thinking about code or listening to code or having to write code or something like that. And I literally, just spent time with the fam. And my lady, she just kept telling me, I love, I love how much time you've been spending with us, these last few days. And it's good to have that balance. Um, but she also understands, we talked about it. We're a unit. We're one unit. We move as one. So we talked about, me, the possibility of me taking on two full-time gigs and what the time requirements were going to be, because of that. And so she was on board. She understands that I get up in the morning, 8 o'clock. I come down here to this office. I take a little bit of time for lunch, maybe 20 minutes for lunch, 30 minutes for lunch, and we'll get together. When she's here, we sit down and we eat lunch together and chat for 20, 30 minutes. I come back to work. Uh, I take another little break when the kids come home from school for maybe 30 minutes, hour or something like that at the most. And then other than that, I'm in this seat till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, sometime 11, 12 o'clock at night. And I get up, go to bed. She's already sleeping in the bed. My little one's asleep. I get in the bed and then I'm up at 8 the next morning and do it all over again. That's one of the sacrifices that, we make as a family to get to the place where we want to be, or where I want the family to be financially at least. So, so she's on board. Anyway, okay. Oh, cool, man. You found the channel thanks to Joe. Again, welcome. Welcome, Mr. Tamer. I appreciate it. Most coding tests algorithm based or project based for front end. Interview prepping as well. My JavaScript, I can tell you right now, is not strong. Uh, my JavaScript for my first front end job was not strong at all. It was barely even there at all. Um, Most of the tests that I've had for front end stuff that were coding challenges have been project based. So they would give me something to accomplish in a certain amount of time, and I had to code it up. It wasn't like algorithms and stuff because they know most good places know. I think only the big boys like Google and Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc. I think those are uh, pretty much places like in Silicon Valley, maybe, that are trying to copy the big boys like Google and Facebook and Apple and Amazon. Um, those might be the only places where you're getting like algorithm and data structure type um, coding interviews as a front end developer. Um, Most of the other places, if you get a coding challenge, it's going to be to actually write some front end code, um, not to not to do data structures and algorithms, because that's really not what you're going to do in real life, day to day front end web development. You're not going to be doing data structures and algorithms. All that stuff happens on the back end. They have to worry about data structure design and all that stuff. If you're trying to go for full stack positions, then maybe yes. So if you're going to be working with databases and data structures and all of that, formatting data, pulling data from a database and formatting it before it gets sent to the front end, then yeah, you might have some questions about data structures and algorithms. But if you're just a front end dev, you know, looking to write front end code, then you're probably not going to have to worry too much about data structures and algorithm. It's definitely good to read up on high level stuff so that at least you're knowledgeable. If they throw a word or a term out there, you'll at least know what it is. I told that story how I was in the parking lot of my first professional interview for a company, and I was reading the PHP design pattern book, and all I was doing was like reading the first paragraph from each chapter, which was a different design pattern, so that I at least knew the name. If they said, "Do you know what? Have you ever heard of repository pattern? Have you heard of factory pattern?" At least I could say, "Yeah, I had," because I just read that 5 minutes ago before I walked in here. Don't ask me about it because I can't tell you, but I've heard of those terms. They asked me to name a couple of design patterns in that very interview. Now, if I hadn't read that book 5 minutes before I walked in the building, I wouldn't have had no idea what a design pattern was. And they told me that most of the college graduates that we bring into interview um, couldn't even name two or three design patterns. So be knowledgeable about it, but don't spend a lot of time there if your goal is to solely be a front end developer. So that's what I'll say there. I don't know why when I get on the live, my nose always starts itching, man. I feel like I'm sitting here scratching my nose the whole time. I'm self-conscious about it, but anyway. Um, all right. Continue. I heard that developers of Node having some that the developers of Node are having some legal issues. Will this affect the Node community? Really? Node having legal issues. I hadn't heard of this. Let's see what we can find. Um, Node, Node.js, legal issues. Let's see. This is back from 2015. Licensing problems. 2016. Anything in the news? This is from after governance breakdown. Node.js leaders fight for survival. This is back in August. Node Foundation membership grows globally. Um, no, I'm not seeing anything like from super recent. This is it. No leaders fight first. What's this? Tumultuous events this week in the No community were a long time coming. Insiders tells it now the community is trying to repair and prepare for what's to come. Governance breakdown. And this was from this year. Yeah, this was from this year in August. After battling years, I don't think so, man. I'm sure there's not. There's so much that's written in Node now. There's no way it's going anywhere. The community itself is not going to let it die. They had, you know, toxic culture has led to an inclusive, I can't say that word, inclusivity, inclusivity problem. That's it. They had these issues before where they split off and did IOJS for a while. So there was Node.js, like the official that was being ran by, is it Joyent, I think is the company that's behind Node now, the official Node. But the community had did a fork of Node and created IOJS, something about Joyent wasn't allowing updates to the language at a timely manner. So the community forked off and created IOJS, and they had started implementing all these features that developers were wanting into IO. And then, Joyent finally came around and said, hey, look, um, let's get on the same page and we'll start listening to developers more. And then IO.js ended up merging back into Node.js, and then they became one thing. And that's why Node went from like it was Node version 0.12, I think. And then it jumped from that to like Node version 4 or something like that. And it was all because of the merger back in with IO.js, because Node wasn't following a um, semantic versioning scheme, or what do you call it? Labeling. I want to say labeling scheme, project scheme. Ah, I can't think. Anyway, they weren't following the semantic labeling of their releases, and IOJS was, and so that's why I did the version jump versioning, IO semantic versioning of the Node package. So if you've ever heard of the term IOJS, that's where it came from. It was just Node that was forked by the community and then folded back into the official Node.js. But the community is never going to let it die. So, uh, man, that is a relief. You have no idea. Yeah, man, don't. I wouldn't sweat the algorithms and data structure stuff. If you want to learn more about algorithms and data structures, uh, all right, here is a book called Cracking the Coding Interview by this lady. If you can see her name, Gail McDowell. So hopefully that's the right way around and not backwards. But that's the front of the book. It's like the world renowned book for those traditional coding interviews. Cracking the Coding Interview. So this book is all about. Look at that. I just opened to a random page, and you can see it's like algorithms that scale, and all of that stuff. So it talks about all of that. It gives you like example questions. It says 189, what is it? 189 programming questions and solutions. So, um, and you can see it's in its sixth edition by Gail Lockman McDowell. So expensive book. I think it's one of those like $30, $40 books. I don't know. This don't have the price on it, but you can look it up on Amazon. Cracking. Yeah, there we go. Cracking the Coding Interview. Oh, that's digital. I was about to say $10. I want my money back. Yeah, $25. That's about right. Somewhere in there, $25. You can expect to pay. But um, if you want to get good at doing those Facebook and Amazon and Apple and Google interviews where they're going to ask you about data structures and algorithms, that's kind of the Bible for learning that stuff if you didn't learn it in school, where they talk about, big O notation and how much time and uh, it takes for this algorithm to run, and being able to notate that using big O notation and all this stuff. Um, you can find it all in that book. I bought that book because I was getting, I won't say hounded, but somehow a Google recruiter found me, cold called me out the blue, and he wanted me to interview at Google. And while I was extremely flattered at the time, I was also shaking in my boots because I knew that I didn't know that stuff. I didn't learn data structures and algorithms, and um, they expect their front end people to know that stuff as well as their back end people, even though you're not going to be doing that in a day to day role. Um, their coding interview process is kind of standardized, where anyone that's coming in for any type of software development program is they're all going to be asked those same types of questions about data structures and algorithms. So I bought that book thinking that I would like to get prepared for a Google interview, um, but things didn't end up working out. Really, one of the biggest things was that I got these remote jobs, and I did not want to give up um, remote to go work at Google. While having Google on your resume opens up a lot of doors for other places. A lot of places will see Google on your resume and they'll say, if he was good enough for Google, he's good enough for us. If especially if it's some quote unquote lesser company, if you believe in that. Pardon me. Um, I hope that didn't bust anybody's ears who has headphones on like me. Anyway, I was going to study that book and try to learn um, about doing those type of whiteboard coding challenges with data structures and um, algorithms and stuff. But I had barely got started in it to when I kind of realized that what I'm even if I flew out to California and interviewed for Google and they gave me a job, am I gonna move out to California for a job at Google? The answer was, ah, not really. You know what I'm saying? And at this point, they wouldn't be paying me. I wouldn't be making any more money living there. You know, it's with the 2 gigs, I would be losing money. Moving out to California, number one, because the cost of living and the 13% state tax that I don't have to pay. There's no state tax here in Nevada. It's one of those 5 states that don't have state tax, so I don't get state taxes taken out of my check. So if I go to anywhere else that has state tax, I have to take whatever percentage um, the state tax is and deduct that from my take home pay. And California is 13%. So for every $100,000, they're going to take 13 grand out. So you have to factor that into the offer. And then the cost of living is way higher. And, there's just a theoretical ceiling. They're not going to bring some front end dev in there and pay them 200 plus K, as just a regular front end dev, Google or no Google. So it wouldn't have made sense for me to do it. I still got the book though. If I ever change my mind and want to get into that stuff, I definitely can. But um, I don't see a reason for it now. So mine is just sitting on my shelf until until I either decide to use it or get rid of it or something like that. But we'll see. Yeah, I'll be full stack at some point. So I study, but I'm just trying to do the front end thing now. Yeah, that's not a bad gig. It's good to be full stack because it gives you more value. The more valuable you make yourself as a developer, the more you can demand and pay. So it's hard to only know one thing and to go in and be um, demand a very high pay. You know, I think you see even there's some junior devs on YouTube that kind of run up against that sometimes. When you're first starting out, if you if you don't have a vast, knowledge field to choose from, you're just not as valuable. I mean, you got to put yourself in the shoes of the employer and say, if I have this person that knows A, B, C, D, E, and then I got somebody else that only knows A and B, this person is more valuable to me. Unless one of the A and B that this person knows is some specialty thing, and they're a quote unquote expert in that thing, then maybe they will be as valuable as the person that knows more. Um, but you're taking a big chance in, one of the things that being something that is highly sought after. So, I mean, I kind of lucked up with something like that in with the whole new wave of Angular thing, in that, I was one of the few people that had a significant amount of experience with the new version of Angular um, when it came out, because a lot of companies are going to wait for it to be out for a while and be stable and settle down before they pick it up. And I was doing work, that whole time where they're waiting and they're still using old Angular 1 stuff. I've been working in Angular 2. So when they go to do a switch over to Angular 2, guess who is the quote unquote one of the experts, or my expertise is in Angular 2, right here. So I end up picking up that work because all of their developers didn't take the time to learn Angular 2 because their day jobs are in Angular 1. So they don't have people that are experts. So they you always look to bring somebody onto the team that has knowledge in the thing that you're going to switch to. So that's kind of the deal there. Uh, can you stay being full stack dev and never have to evolve? Oh, front end and never have to evolve to a full stack dev the longer you stay in the job. You can. Um, there are people that have been front end, started out being front end, and they've been front end forever, um, and they've never changed or stepped out. So you can do that. You risk being passed behind if anything ever happens with that job. So I would be cautious. Um, if that's your thing. Like I said, you don't want to be a one-trick pony. Uh, I've seen people that the application was built, say, 15 years ago, right? And a technology that was popular 15 years ago, which has now been dropped. It's no longer in favor. But the application for the company's product was written in that. They have started to transition off of that older technology, but there's still a core part of the old application that is written in that old technology, and they have that one person, or that those two people, one or two people that are still experts in that old technology, and uh, that is their only call. That's their only name for to value. Getting a phone call. Let me decline that. Okay, cool. But their only value is because they know an old technology. Now, if they tried to go to anywhere else, or they ever got fired or laid off, they're kind of screwed because they are experts in a technology that is no longer favorable. And you don't want to be that person, because now you got to scramble and try to get up to speed with the new stuff, you know. And a lot of people get comfortable. It's very easy to get comfortable in programming, especially when you start making good money. When you start making six-figure money, or anywhere around six-figure money, um, they say once you get above 75,000, um, that life doesn't really change drastically for you anymore. So once you cross that 75,000 a year threshold, um, it's easy to get comfortable, because you at that point, you got enough money to pay for all the basic necessities of life. You can live in a good place that's not in the hood. You can afford food, the clothes, all the basic necessities. You got enough to pay car notes and get around and all that stuff like that. So on top of that is just extra and bonuses. And yeah, you might get a bigger house, or you might get a more fancy car, but once you hit 75K or more, you've got all the basics that you need. And a lot of people get to that level, 75K, and depending on where their life circumstances are at, they're cool, and they settle out and ride that wave, and they're cool and good to go. And there's nothing that's wrong with that. If that's your life circumstances, um, it's good to go. But just always make sure you keep your value up, because of what if. I don't like rugs pulled out from under me, so I'm always prepared. Where if this job says we no longer need your services, hey, that's cool. Ain't crap. If I lost one of these two jobs now, I could lose one of these two jobs and my life is not going to fall apart. You know what I'm saying? Because I made sure to set things up so that, that won't be the case. If anything, we just tighten up the belt strap for a month or two, till you get another gig secured and you go right on about trucking. But my whole life is, I don't want to say, I don't want to say the fear, but I feel the pressure because I'm responsible for five people. You know what I'm saying? I'm responsible for me, my lady, my two kids, my stepkid. Um, I'm responsible for all those. So I take that I take that responsibility very serious. And I would be a fool if I'm running around uh, uh, kind of financially frivolous and naked. I'm spending everything that I get in. I ain't got no savings. I ain't got no investments. I ain't got nothing going on. And then I lose that gig. And now I got, four sets of eyes looking at me like, how we gonna eat? How we gonna pay this mortgage? How we gonna pay this car note? So that's why I talk about business and money and finances a lot because that's a big part of my life. Now there are people out there that they don't have kids, they don't have a mortgage, uh, you know, they ain't got to worry about those things, and you can go about living. I told you my homeboy Ed, he just travels the world. He goes to Ukraine and Russia and Colombia and Brazil and Thailand, and he's a single, very handsome, light skinned brother, and he's out there, let's just say, experiencing the world. You know, his Instagram is popping, if you know what I mean. And so we live two totally different lives. We do the same profession, but we approach money and living life in totally different ways because of our life circumstances. And I don't hate, I congratulate, and I say, boy, if I was you making the kind of money we make when I was single, I'd be right there with you. But I live a different life and I get my satisfaction from being able to take care of my family. So that being said, uh, like I said, my ear sneezed as well. My bad for sneezing in your ear, my man. I wouldn't move to California from Vegas or Phoenix. That money difference is huge. Yeah, that money difference is huge, man. I want to become a front end dev in the future, but I got on campus WordPress job in my current college starting in a week. Did I shoot myself in the foot for going into a WordPress job? Nah, I don't think you did, Burke. You uh, just take it for what it is. So you got a WordPress gig now. I want to become a front end dev in the future, but I got an on campus WordPress job in my college starting in a week. So I would take it for what it is. Take the opportunity to really get good at producing WordPress sites and applications, and learn how to do those custom fields and all of that stuff. Take the opportunity to really get good because even if you become a front end dev in the future, that's a skill that you can put in your back pocket. And now you've increased your value. Now, if anything happens at the gig where you're doing front end uh, and you get let go or they go out of business, which has happened to me, the reason I'm so paranoid about those things is because it's happened to me. I worked at the company where they sent me the email and said, "Don't come to work tomorrow because we can't pay you." You know, um, is if you got to fall back out of that and say you need to start freelancing for a little bit, put some money in your pocket, or you got somebody that needs some website work done, you can pull that WordPress knowledge out of your back pocket and put it to work, generating income for yourself and for your family. So um, I wouldn't say you shot yourself in the foot at all. Take the opportunity to learn that skill, especially you're basically going to get paid to learn a new skill, you know. Um, so take that opportunity and learn that new skill. Definitely. I mean, you ain't got to be there for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So learn a new skill. Just be aware that there's a world outside of WordPress and don't get stuck, quote unquote, stuck in the WordPress world But if you do WordPress for a couple of years, man, and really get good at that, I only see that as a bonus, you know? So that's the deal there. Uh, yeah, Kevin said I'm responsible for 4 people, so he gets it. I can see that. Uh, that's what's up. Okay, you got to get your foot in the door somewhere. Yep. You should build things and expect time so you're not stuck in the WordPress bubble. Exactly, exactly. Word for today is niche. Nose itch. Yeah, man. I know, man. It's driving me crazy. Like my nose don't never itch until I like get on a stream or something like that. My nose gonna be itching. It's crazy. Anyway, thanks for the advice. Appreciate it a lot. No problem. But we're folks getting comfortable. Yeah, just don't get comfortable. Don't settle. I always try to try to progress and be the best you and the best developer that you can be, and just keep your value up. You know what I'm saying? Just always keep an eye on your value. What is my value, and how can I raise my value? How can I acquire a new skill um, that somebody will pay me for? I always be seeking to learn a new skill and increase your value and your state. So interesting. Thanks for the info. Yeah, man. Of course, Berke. I hope you I hope that does you well. You know what I'm saying? I hope you go kill it, man. I hope you kill it. But that looks like I'm at the end of the chat now. This went like way longer. Full remote, man. That's my dream. Yeah, man. Hey, that's it. I'm at work right now. This is my office. You know what I'm saying? So I'm living the dream. And both my jobs kind of real slow right now. At the end of the year, it's gonna be crazy. Coming to start of the new year, but it's cool. I just wake up, throw on the shirt, and come on downstairs. It's I couldn't go back to an office gig now. They have to offer me some stupid money for me to go to an office gig. I'm so ingrained in the remote world. You know what I'm saying? Having my own having my own setup. You know what I'm saying? I got all my monitors and stuff exactly how I want it. I can, if I want to listen to podcasts, I can listen to podcasts out loud. If I want to play music, I can play music out loud. You know, everything is just where I want it to be, how I want it to be. I get up and go get my coffee. We go get our coffee. My brother-in-law bought me this. Let's see, where to go? Yeah, while sleepy, fill cup, called the fill cup function. Drink the coffee function. So it's a while loop for this. And I fill my little coffee up with the Keurig. And I'm good to go, man. Uh, they said they said I would be the first ever first semester student they picked up for the job. I think Siri think I'm trying to ask her a question. I I'll be working the third and fourth semester students, so I won't feel the imposter syndrome people talk about. Don't feel bad if you do get the imposter syndrome, Burke. I still get the imposter syndrome. Whenever I run into a problem that takes me like a whole day or sometimes multiple days to solve, man, I feel like the biggest idiot. But no, just know that every developer runs up against imposter syndrome, um, and don't let that stop you. Don't even know WordPress and Foundation yet, but they like me, so here we go. Yeah, man. It's an opportunity to get paid to learn. That's the best thing ever, man. Is getting paid to learn. All right, yeah, Adrian, it's a good one. Yes, it is. Keep doing your thing. Yep, yep, yep. Cool, man. Yo, I appreciate y'all for stopping in. I love it. It's a great conversation. I feel like we had great conversation today. Um, I love that people were contributing, in the chat room, not just me answering questions, but other people were contributing, answering questions. Kelvin, Collar, Burke, Nifinium. Uh, I appreciate all y'all for stopping by, man. And, we'll do it again. We'll do it again soon. So if y'all are not a part of the Slack room, I would suggest that, and because you'll get a little bit of a heads up before we start Going live. So this is the Black Knight Coding Slack room. That's in here. You can see I posted about an hour ago. We're going live 3 p.m. Pacific, so people had a heads up as to what's going on. There are different rooms in here. There's uh, coding videos. Whenever I run across a cool video that I think should be shared, I post those up here as well, and different blogs and articles that I come across as well is posted up here. And then the general room where everybody's in here chatting and talking and stuff. But it's a good way to stay connected when there aren't any lives going on or any videos being dropped. You can definitely stay connected there. And there's also, let me see. Mm, mm, mm. On top of that, let me pull this over as well. I always mention the Slack room, but I forget to mention that there's also the Facebook group as well. Um, for if you just look up Black Knight Coding on Facebook, you'll see the page as well. If you want to throw a like on the page, boom, it'll start you to following, and I post a lot of that same stuff here. If I run across a good article or video or something like that, um, then I'll post it up here as well. So if you're not a Slack person and you prefer to do Facebook, you can definitely get the Facebook um, going as well. So I check them all, every day. So as you can see, I have the Slack up the whole time because on Slack, let me see. On Slack, I have my company stuff here as well. Here's job number one. Here's job number two. Here's my Black Knight coding stuff, and then this is that podcast coding blocks that I talked about. They have their own Slack room that I participate in as well. They got channels on cryptocurrency and Angular stuff, and you can see in here I've posted responses in here on the some of the Angular stuff that people ask. Oh, I guess it's ran out of space, so I can't scroll back up. But anyway, that's it for now. And I think I'll holler at y'all later. If there's no other questions, especially, I'm gonna join that room soon. Thanks everyone. First time listening to. Okay, man, cool. That's good stuff. I'll holler at all y'all later. Peace.